Hi, I'm Paul Kyogan from GK Tuition, and in this video I want to talk to you about geometry. Now the question I'm looking at here is 2018 Paper 2 Question 6 Part B. In this question we're given the parallelogram PQ or S, and we're asked to write down the values of alpha and the values of beta. If a question says write down, that implies that you don't actually have to do any work. You can literally just write down the answer. So you just have to think to your theorems here. You should know that opposite sides and opposite angles in a parallelogram are equal to each other. So that means that the angle 115 here is equal to the angle alpha up here. So straight away you can just write that down. Your first answer is that alpha is equal to 115. Now you should know that beta and this angle need to add up to 180. Or you could view it as beta and alpha need to add up to 180. Either way, in order to work out beta is 180 minus 115. So the angle beta works out as 65 degrees. So your two answers there are alpha is 115, beta is 65 degrees. Okay, in the final part of this question, we're asked to prove that the triangle PRS and the triangle PRQ are congruent. Now remember, congruent triangles are triangles where all the sides and all the angles are the exact same. And there's a number of different ways to prove that two triangles are congruent. So the way that I'm doing it is not necessarily the way that you will have done it, but just be aware there are a number of different ways of doing it. What you need to do is you need to be able to prove that there's three things in the triangle in the triangle PRQ that are equal to three things in the triangle PRS. So if I can prove they have two sides and an angle that are equal, or two angles and a side that are equal, or three sides that are equal, then that means they must be congruent. So what I've chosen to do here is, first of all, I can say that the side PQ is equal to the side SR. The side PQ is in this triangle, the side SR is in the other triangle. I know that they're equal to each other because they're opposite sides in a parallelogram. Earlier in the question it told me that this is a parallelogram, and I know from my geometry opposite sides in a parallelogram are equal to each other. So I know that that side equals that side. The next thing that I said is that the angle OR PQ is this angle, is equal to the angle SOR-P, which is this angle. The reason I know that they're equal to each other is because they're alternate angles. Remember, you might have learned them in school as like Z angles. They usually form kind of this shape of a Z. Because it's a parallelogram, I know that SR is parallel to PQ. And because that line and that line are parallel to each other, I can say that the angle here and the angle here are alternate angles. Now that's two things. So I've proven they have a side in common and they have an angle. They have a side that's equal and they have equal angles. I need to prove one more thing. The third thing I've proved here is that the side PS is equal to the side ORQ. And again, it's the same explanation as the first one, because opposite sides in a parallelogram are equal to each other. So happy days, that's my third thing. So usually we call this proof SAS, which means first we proved a side, then we proved an angle, then we proved another side. In general, if you can prove they have three things in common, that means they're congruent. The exception to that is if you prove that all three angles are equal to each other, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're congruent. So if you're not 100% sure on this theory, make sure you go back over your notes or go back through the book and make sure you're clear on how to prove triangles are congruent. Once I've proven that they've two sides and an angle in common, I can therefore conclude that the triangle PQR and the triangle PRS are congruent. Now, I hope all of that makes sense. If there's anything you're not sure of there or you'd like me to clarify it, just send me an email and I'll try and explain it differently.